in Fort.
Didn't used to tell you that audibly. I don't know what they, all of a sudden it started announcing.
You would think in 2021 we wouldn't be worried about poor internet service anymore, but it seems like that is still the order of the day in Manitoba.
Well, particularly
Especially out of, yeah.
Welcome to everyone who's joined so far. We're expecting more, so we'll give them a little bit of time to log in and get connected. But welcome here. The session this evening is being recorded, so if you have friends that want to catch it later, it will be available on the MACHS website. But we'll get started in just a few minutes. So if you want to refill your coffee or your water or whatever you need, now is a great time to do that. Sent out a reminder both on Facebook as well as by email to probably around 2,000 addresses today, or it was just before noon, and probably at least 10 responses came back saying, "Is this going to be recorded? I can't be there. Can I catch it later?" So
I've attended a lot of sessions, Gerald, where they've been recorded, and it almost seems like the recordings are viewed by a greater number of people than those that were in the actual attendance. So recording them is obviously well worth it, and it seems to just really allow for that wider audience to step in.
This meeting continue.
Hey, how come it's so wide now?
When it's what? Can you hear anything?
we can hear you, the Smiths. You're speaking. Welcome to the call.
Hi, sorry, didn't realize you did.
No problem.
Я не знаю, как. Посмотри, что нас не видно было. Это, наверное, выключено у нас. Не знаю, сейчас надо посмотреть. Мне надо одеться. Он сделал. Кто сделал? Ты сам сделал или сам?
Dobrovicha to Samuel. Sounded like Russian anyways. Well, welcome to everyone. We're glad that you're able to join us here this evening as part of the MACHS June Progress Report Workshop. And I want to welcome our guests here with us this evening. Larissa McDonald, who's a homeschool mom from Minnedosa. Ellen Schrader with Manitoba Education, the homeschool liaison. Michelle Marchandon, homeschool liaison, and retired homeschool mom, as well as Peter Andres, who's also with Manitoba Education as a liaison. So great to have all of you as presenters with us here today. Our program is going to be, I'm just going to talk for a few minutes an introduction and just update you a little bit on the MACHS situation and why we're here today. Then I'm going to ask Larissa McDonald to just do a presentation from her perspective as a veteran homeschool mom who's done these progress reports many times before. And looking forward, as always, to Larissa sharing her experience. And then we'll hear from Manitoba Education. And so good to have our friendly liaisons with us here today to be able to share the process and the progress on the June progress report. So, and then about 9:15, we will break for a discussion, question and answer time. So there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. But throughout our discussion, if you have questions, you can use the chat feature down at the bottom of your screen or someplace on your screen, because it's different places on different devices. And you can just chat your question. And we have a number of people that are monitoring that. Peter Andres from Department of Education, Cheryl and Larissa and myself from MACHS. And just feel free to chime in with your questions. So we are here for the June Progress Report Workshop. What's required in Manitoba for home education, first of all, is that children need to be in school. Manitoba is a compulsory school attendance province, has been for many, many years, since about 1916 or 17, I can't remember the exact year, but there always has been a provision that says basically children must be in school unless they're receiving an education at home or elsewhere. And the legislation right now says an equivalent education. And it goes on to describe how that is determined or how that's documented. First of all, it's needed that parents would notify the minister or his designate. And we've got 3 of those designated people here with us who receive those notifications. And the notification has a brief educational plan that's part of it. And then there's a requirement for 2 progress reports in January and June. And we're here to talk about the June report. Now, why do we need to do this? Well, it's the law. The law says that we need to do this, but I would say that there's a higher reason. There's another important reason that it's important for you as a homeschool parent to document and to keep records of your child's progress and how it's been going and what you've been doing, because someday, likely somebody's going to ask. I got a call this morning from somebody whose child was wanting to get into the military, and they were saying, how can they document that? And we talked about the reality that they needed to have a transcript and records that they could show to the military as something that would show that this is what's been done. And so that's that. It's for your own use, I think, first and foremost, and it has a use to fulfill the requirements of the law. What we'll be talking about here today is the mechanics of how do you complete a June progress report? What do you need to put into it? How do you do it? How do you submit it? And I know that Manitoba Ed will be sharing with us, as will Larissa, examples of what do you say to do the wording. To just put a tick mark and say they're good isn't good enough. You need some information that shows their learning progress. And I know that Ellen and Michelle will be talking more about that, but it is required and I think wise to have those records and to be able to document them for your own use, as well as providing them for Manitoba Education. But I think the higher use and the more important use is actually for yourself to be able to have them, whether it be for college entrance, whether it be for jobs, whether it would be for further training. There's things that right now you may not anticipate, but someday you never know where your children are going to be. Just a little bit of protocol. If you can, feel free to leave your camera on. It always helps to know that there's actually somebody sitting on the other side of the camera and to be able to see you and be able to interact with you. I have muted you all at this point. We will have a question and answer to be able to deal with questions later. But as I said, you can know about was first of all, for information in Manitoba on home education, you can feel free to use the MACHS website. We have a lot of information on there about the regulations, about resources, about events that are happening that you'll want to know about. And we also have several Facebook pages that give you information in addition to the website. But on the website, you'll find recordings like sessions like we're doing right here today. The January Progress Report Workshop is recorded and is posted, as well as a series of about 10 or 12 introduction to homeschool, exploring homeschool workshops. So all of that information is there and is available to you to be able to download. There's also a lot of links to other information that's out there. One of the great new websites that's out there right now that has good information for Manitoba and all across Canada is homeschool.today. And you'll find a link to that in the MACHS website if you can't remember it. We recently met with the Minister of Education, the Honorable Cliff Cullen, to ask him some questions about Bill 64. Bill 64 is a bill that's before the legislature in Manitoba that's proposing sweeping changes to the education regulations, primarily the Public Schools Act, and it actually would create a new act that would do a whole bunch of things to public education and private education in the province. Largely, it's a status quo for homeschooling, not that many changes, but there are some changes in the definition of homeschooling and some of the words that are used, and we had some questions. So we raised our concerns, or our questions rather, with the minister, and we're waiting for a response in writing from the minister, as well as providing some information back to him. Basically, at this point, it's status quo at least until next school year, because the bill won't be considered again until the fall, and so we have time to make some further inquiries and suggestions and so forth with it. But at this point, we're pretty supportive of Bill 64 as it applies to home education, because it largely recognizes the right of parents to choose and direct the education of their children. And that's the basis of what we believe is the freedom for home education in Manitoba. So if you have questions at any time about these things, you can feel free to go to the MACHS website, or just email us. The email is info@matches.ca, and you'll get us and be able to ask us the questions on an ongoing basis. We're thrilled here today to have with us, and thanks Cheryl for chatting that email address out. We're thrilled to have here today a great friend from Minnedosa, Larissa McDonald. Larissa is a veteran homeschooler and is very involved in a large support group in Western Manitoba, the Westman Homeschool Connection. And I don't know what the numbers are at, but it's boomed like homeschooling all around Manitoba, all around Canada, and all around the world. The numbers are great. And so Larissa, thanks for taking some time out of your day. And what I'd like to ask is if you could chat with us a little bit about your experience as a veteran homeschooler in completing the June progress report. And I know that you've had some discussions and actually submitted some things to Manitoba Ed already, and you can give us some feedback. So I'll ask you to step up and jump in now.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerald. As Gerald mentioned, my name is Larissa McDonald, and my husband and I have homeschooled all the way through with our children. We have 8. The oldest graduated last year. The second one graduated this year in February. The third one will graduate next year. And then I get a few years to sort of pay more attention to the middle group as they come through. And our youngest is just 4. So I have job security till 2035. We're doing good. I used to be kind of nervous about these June reports. It felt like kind of my own report card instead of one for my children. But I've come to realize that it's just a way of documenting, as Gerald was mentioning, documenting what we've done and what my children are capable at this point in time. The province isn't here to judge us or to judge where we're at, but merely to make sure we're making progress with our kids and providing them an education. I also used to be kind of nervous about giving them too much information. And I've come to realize that that's probably the opposite of what I should have been worried about. This year, I have had the opportunity to not only meet, but get to know Michelle and Alan. And it's made me realize what an amazing homeschool office we have in our province, and that they are rooting for us and that they're there to help us. So if we are struggling with something, we just need to be honest with that, and they will come alongside us and help. So I've become much more comfortable about sharing both where my kids are advanced and where they aren't as far ahead as I would like, even if that means they're behind what you would consider at grade level for what grade they are in. To illustrate, I'd like to share some of the comments I put on my reports this year. We finished last Friday, and so I finished most of my reports now, especially for my daughter who finished in February. And so for my son in grade 5, I put, he continues to progress at above grade level in reading and do well in writing and dictation as well. He also completed Rod and Staff English 4 ahead of schedule. My next son isn't quite so lucky. He's a late birthday, so we kept him back. He's now 9 and in grade 3, and he is still struggling to learn to read. So for him, I put, he's still progressing slowly with reading, having reached an early 3rd grade level. He's still using the emerging reader books, not the reading program I had hoped for this at this point. Vision therapy is being explored to rule out physical issues, and he has completed learning both manuscript and cursive. I'd like to stress that it's to our own benefit to share even the challenges. With 2 children having graduated, both of which had different learning issues, I've come to realize that if I had documented for them, like I am for my 9-year-old, that things in the future that are coming ahead might be easier. Since I did not, if they struggle in the future in post-secondary, we might have trouble because I didn't document things like the accommodations I made for them, reading aloud, audiobooks, using voice to text. Those aren't documented, so it will be more difficult to prove that they had a learning challenge, especially since they weren't diagnosed. They don't have a label. So it will be almost impossible to prove that they have that. And so they would have to go through more hoops in order to get accommodations and access services if they need them in post-secondary. So I've learned my lesson. I hope you can learn from mine before you get there. Moving on, June reports. The first thing I do when I sit down to do them is I save a file for each of my children. So I save the main one off of the website, and then I save a copy, one with each of their names on it, and then fill out all the information. And then I get out my September notification forms and my January reports, and I read through them for the first child. And I find that's a really good starting place. And I can touch on each of the things I mentioned in September and the things I did or did not mention in January. So there are several things I try to comment on. The first is what we've completed or haven't completed that year, especially if it's a full course. Some of my kids finish mid-year a certain thing, and so we start new ones mid-year, and I just say where we're at in each of those. I state if we've dropped something completely, like the year that we dropped home ec curriculum for my high schooler because it made her schedule too full. And this year, one of my high schoolers switched. He was using one program and switched partway through. So for him, I said, he's done some of Life of Fred and decided to switch to teaching textbooks. He's partway through geometry and plans to finish it, and either pre-calculus or Life of Fred statistics by the end of April 2022. So for him, he's working on our farm, so he plans to finish by the end of April. If it was one of my other kids, I might have said end of June. That's just where he's at. That lets the people at the provincial office know not only that we didn't finish, but that we're aware of what we need to do and our plan for the future. The other thing that I also mentioned for my core subjects is anything we did that I hadn't mentioned in September or January, resources or lessons that we came upon in our year that I hadn't expected to find and that we used. So I just add them in. So I do that for each of the core subjects, and then I move on to that little other spot at the bottom. And there are several things that I make sure to document, any activities or achievements they've done throughout the year. So for our kids, that includes 4-H, what communication level they went to, what project they did, what volunteering they did, whether they were on any teams, whether that's sports or science or coding or whatever teams your kids might be on. If they've taken extra courses like swimming, first aid, or driver's ed. If they did any work like babysitting or working on the farm, or if they volunteered somewhere, if they entered, and especially if they won any competitions. And if I didn't include them in September, any leadership programs or camps they attended the previous summer that wouldn't have gotten on that year's June report. And once I'm done all my kids' reports, I don't print them off until I'm done them all, because I always remember something around kid number 4 or 5 that I forgot for kid number 1. Once I'm done them all, then I print them off. And I know it seems almost redundant, especially if you're filling it out on the computer and then sending it in by email, but I really like having a hard copy. I have 12 years worth of them here. But I really find it is much easier to have them out in front of me when I'm ready to do my June report. If I have September and January in front of me, then I don't have to be switching back and forth with the little screens on the computer. It just makes it easier. So I like having that hard copy, especially as extra insurance in case my hard drive dies. Although I do know I could always contact Alan and he would send me all I need, but it's good to have my own. Anyway, I lost my place in my paragraph here. I think that's it for there. For the early years, I don't put any marks at all unless we have, say, a math program that they do tests in. So there's my grade 2 daughters. I just put a little mark there to show that I've seen the box, and then I put the comments that I have for her. But then in high school, I do start. And so I've covered up some of the things. This is my grade 12 daughters. And so she had in language arts, we do half credits, one of composition and one of literature. And so I marked those both in there. And then she did an extra one. So I put the extra mark over here. She actually completed 2 maths this year and her science mark. And then social studies, she did both a world history and an art appreciation in history. So we've got those there. Her agricultural apprenticeship, I gave her credit for the work she did on the farm. And our Bible course as well gets a mark as well. So there's only room really for 2 marks here. So some of them I put in the text as well. Phys ed, and then she also took a course at ACC. So that is just written as a note that she went to post-secondary and said transcript available, and we'll keep that separate. I know that June reports isn't necessarily a grad thing, but I do just want to mention that documentation for grad, it's one thing that came up on our Westman Homeschool Connection page that people were interested in. And so my daughter applied to CMU this year, and I had to hand in all her courses, what resources they used, a course description, and our grading system for each course for grade 11 and 12. And that with my homemade transcript was enough. Then she went to apply to BU, and they wanted something official from the school or the province. Well, from a homeschool, I sort of wondered if official from my homeschool would be enough for them. So I sent Alan off an email and said, hey, can I get a stamped copy of the transcript and reports that I sent in? And so Alan sent me back a PDF of all of her notification forms and reports for all of her high school years. And then I only have a black printer, so I made a little marker to show what colors they were, but this was orange and this was blue and this was red to show that he'd approved it and entered it and received it and the date that he received it. And so that was on all of them, and I could send that to them, and then it was officially from the school, but the province has seen it and approved it. And then I also make up a transcript. And so this was copied off of what CMU had as their sample transcript. So at the top, it's just our information, the school information and my daughter's name and everything. And then the mark, that overall average that she got, and the date I issued it, and the graduation date. And again, it was stamped by Alan. Then I had her grade 12 courses and the marks and the months she finished them, the grade 11, the grade 10, and then the grade 10 and grade 9 on the next page. And then I listed her post-secondary experience. And then this was all her extracurricular activities. And that was really easy because all I had to do is go through all of my June reports. And in the other section, I had all of her things written down there. So that was a real blessing to have that already done. I just had to go through those pages to do that. So overall, it's really easy to fill out a June report. Just tell them what you've done, what you haven't done, and what you added or dropped since last time you reported. And that's all I had planned to say. Back to you. If we still have.
We certainly
Good job.
do. Thank you, Larissa, for just for that excellent presentation, for sharing your
You're welcome.
experience. You know, there's so much. You know, we could have various conferences and things, but it's homeschool parents sharing with homeschool parents. So what did you do? How did it go? What happened? And I just want to thank you for your willingness to share your experience. And I know that there was one question here that came into the chat, and that was, how do you determine the number of credits? Do you want to speak?
That's a good question. I think it really depends on what you're doing and what style of homeschooling you're doing. For us, I use a curriculum that lays it out for me. So we have a credit of history and a credit of science and that kind of thing. If you're using a regular homeschool program like ACE or any of those homeschool curriculums, usually what they sell you as a subject for a year is a credit. Some of them are half credits. And then for the ones that I wasn't using a formal curriculum for, we just went by sort of the general Manitoba curriculum hours. So 120 hours was a credit and 60 hours was a half credit. And I awarded based on the time they spent in that subject area.
Thanks, Larissa.
You're welcome.
We'll have more time for questions later, but I think an excellent introduction. And so I'm not sure who's going to go first, Ellen or Michelle, but would like to welcome our friends from Manitoba Education, and I say that sincerely. Because I think we are friends and we're working together. So want to welcome you, and I know that you've got a presentation that you'll take us through, and then we can have some discussion. So Michelle, it looks like you're going first.
Yeah, I think Alan is going to share his screen though for the presentation. So I don't know if he's got that up yet.
Looks like he's working on it.
Okay. I wanted to say actually, Larissa, a comment. In Manitoba, 110 hours is a full credit, and so 55 hours would be a half credit. Just you're doing extra.
Great. My poor guinea pigs, the first kids who went through and had to do so much extra, hey?
Yeah, the bar was higher.
Yeah. And the curriculum we use is even higher. Some of their stuff, I cut out stuff and we were still over hours. So a lot of people do a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
Ellen,
Can you see the screen that says June homeschooling progress report? Does that show up?
No.
Or not? No?
No, we can't see it.
Okay. Oh, you know what I did? Oh, my apology. I know what I did wrong. I forgot to hit the share button.
There you go. Now we see it.
Excellent.
That share button gets you every time. Every program is a little different. So it's been a while since I've shared something on Zoom. So my apologies for that.
So
Anyway.
yeah, I'll let Alan maybe start us off.
Sure. Okay, for sure. Thank you, Larissa, for a great synopsis. When I have a chance to review your reports, I always enjoy reviewing them because of the depth and breadth of information and the fact that it tells a story. Because for me, stories of students is they're so very important, all of those additional things that you talk about that your students do, just talk about how rounded their education is, and that's really important to see, because a rounded education makes really rounded people, and certainly I can say your students are well on the way to that mark, and it's always a pleasure. So we're here tonight for some discussion around the June homeschooling progress report. My colleague, Michelle Marshall-Daw, and myself will talk to you about aspects of the June report. And our colleague, Peter Andres, is in the chat room ready to answer questions that you may have, so that you don't have to wait till the end of the presentation. You've got someone to go to who is going to be able to provide you with some feedback that you're looking for.
Yeah, so these are the 4 liaisons that are currently now with the Manitoba Homeschooling Office. Jasmine Reimer was not able to join us this evening, but she does say hello. And we do all work to support and help families. And our goal is really to help all families meet the requirements as they're outlined in the Public Schools Act, so that they can see success in homeschooling in every aspect. Basically, as homeschooling liaison officers, I think this has been mentioned already, but we are tasked with determining equivalency. That is in the Public Schools Act. And our reference point for equivalency is the public school. So homeschooling liaisons, we all read every report and every program outline that is submitted to the office. So everything is, reviewed. And if we have questions when it comes to that equivalency piece, that's when a liaison officer will reach out to a parent or a family to get some clarification. But mostly we're just here to reassure you that all liaisons are interested in supporting and working with the family to ensure success in meeting equivalency. Specifically this year, Jasmine and Peter are working with the newest families that have joined homeschooling. As you know, we've had a fairly big influx in the number of homeschooling families this year. And so Ellen and I work with what we call the returning families, the families that have maybe homeschooled for several years now. And Jasmine and Peter have been, I think, very happy to help out with all the new families.
The Public Schools Act does talk about periodic progress reports. It's specifically section 261, subsection or subpart 4. The parent or guardian shall provide the minister with periodic progress reports on each pupil in the homeschool. And basically that just simply means a homeschooling family must provide progress reports annually after the end of June or after the end of January and the end of June, using the appropriate homeschooling report form. Where a family chooses to provide more information than the space may allow on the form, parents are welcome to attach additional sheets. We have made changes to the forms so that they can accommodate more information right in the form, and Michelle will talk a little more about that later. But the goal is to provide parents with an ongoing friendlier piece of documentation to work with, so that they're not struggling the way we struggled a couple of years ago, and really discovered even more recently that no, we just weren't happy with the report forms the way they were. So what you'll see if you visit the website now is like our electronic report forms that really, I think, are a whole lot better. Michelle will talk more about that later.
The reporting process, I think, is fairly self-explanatory, but there's the progress reports for each child in January and in June of each homeschooling year. And the January and the June are due at the end of their respective months. So we really encourage families to respect those timelines. It's very difficult for a liaison to work with or support a family if we get the January report in June, for example. That January report now, if we have questions or clarification or any kind of ideas maybe to support the student, well, we haven't really been able to do so because now here we are at the end of June and it's the end of the school year. So we really encourage families to respect the timelines and to work to submit their reporting in their respective months.
The purpose of the reporting, the homeschooling progress reports really become the official educational record for each homeschooled child, and they are filed in the homeschooling office, and they are kept for 50 years, believe it or not. If students at some point going forward are looking for a record of any of their homeschooling years, we are able to retrieve those and make copies for them. The records may support future enrollment in another school or an application to a post-secondary institution, or even for an employer that wants proof that the student studied to the end of their grade 12 year. So the reporting not only meets legislative requirements, but we see it as really the most of all, or being most of all, beneficial to the student, because it provides a clear and concise record of the present information of the student's progress. And students are able to access that information through us at any point in the future. And we've had situations where families, unfortunately, have had a house fire, lost their records. They've contacted us. We've copied their entire file that they provided for us, and they've got their records back. So the more that parents and families share with us, the more we've got for students down the road, and the more that we can ultimately give back.
Reporting. So basically, on the form, you'll see that a parent is reporting about, the 4 subject areas. So that's the language arts, which includes reading, writing, listening, and speaking, the mathematics, the science, and the social studies. These are the 4 subject areas that are mandatory, I guess, in homeschooling. They're mandated, and students, basically the homeschool students, I guess, of compulsory school age all the way to the end of grade 12 would cover these 4 subject areas. Sometimes we're asked about high school students in a public school not having to study certain subject areas at certain grade levels. And then homeschooling families thinking that, well, then I guess I don't need to do that either. And then they remove, for example, science or something like that from their program. That's not the case. Homeschool students follow just a different format than the public school. So the public school students are working at the high school level at a 30 course track, basically, to complete their high school, whereas homeschool high school students are required to complete the minimum of 16 courses, which these 4 every year. Of course, Larissa was really pointed out, like, what's really important to round off the education is all of the other as well. However, that other isn't mandated or compulsory. So we what we're looking for is specifically these 4, and all of the other is it's excellent to record it.
And then there's the additional reporting options, which Larissa spent some detailed time talking about in the other section of the form. Families may report on areas of study in physical education or music, religious studies, languages, art, career development. I had a high school student recently who had shared with me that she was taking a massage therapy course, and that her instructor was going to ensure that they wrote a report for her that would become part of her June report for that additional option that she was studying. And this becomes important if students at some point decide they are going to step into a high school or later on go to adult education, where their courses, their non-Manitoba courses, could be adjudicated for credit standing on a Manitoba high school transcript. So then documentation in physical education, music, other studies, languages, art, special options courses, those can all be considered by the Adult Education Center for further credit standing on a Manitoba high school transcript down the road. So they all have value. Sometimes parents may feel, well, it's just a special hobby that they have. Really, of what value can it be? But it can be of tremendous value if you take a look at it in terms of skills that are developed and knowledge that is acquired.
And I think Larissa highlighted some really good options with volunteering and some work experience and things like that. That's all some great options that would fall under other. You can find the fillable form on the homeschooling website that's there. We have now homeschooling progress reports that have been updated, as Alan mentioned earlier, where each box, I guess, like fillable box, can hold about the equivalence of like 5 lines or about 600 characters. And we find that a majority of families are able to effectively report using that allotted space. So we're glad that it seems to be meeting the need. And any additional documents that a family would attach, like what Larissa was showing with that transcript that she prepared for her high school level student, then that obviously would require a different space and can be attached accordingly. We also wanted to highlight that there are now new 5-minute short videos that have been put together to support homeschooling families who are looking for information on the student notification form, on the progress reports. And so we just recommend that families take a few minutes and visit the homeschooling website and have a look at these videos. Along with that, these guideline documents were developed, and basically those guideline documents reflect exactly what's being said in the short videos, and the guideline documents have visuals to complement the information. So you can watch it, you can listen to it, you can read it. We really tried to put together sort of a full package to support families who are wanting to understand the processes. And then also we've posted sample reports, so sample June reports. And those reports are on the same webpage again. And we've posted them for grades 2, grade 8, and grade 11 to give you just a sampling of different grade levels and what reporting could look like. We're not expecting families to mirror these samples. That's not the goal. It's just to give different ideas on reporting and what's possible. And I'm sure there's other ways to report as well. It's just trying to support families with some samples. We actually noticed that quite a few families actually visited the homeschooling website and actually took some time, I think, to review the January samples, because we did notice a really just really high quality reporting this January, and we were quite impressed, and we want to commend all the parents who took that time to visit the website and have a look at the samples. So it really reflected in the quality of reporting and made reviewing, I guess, the liaison's job of reviewing and reading all of those January reports very pleasant, and gave us a really good picture of the student learning. Also, just kind of future focused is there are now also new student notification form and program outline samples that are currently available on that same webpage. So parents that are already planning for September submissions for that next school year for homeschooling, they can have a look at the samples for student notification forms as well.
Using the fillable form, and I guess if there's an Achilles heel to some things, it is the fillable form, because that fillable form really works ideally using Adobe Reader. And so the first thing that we really want to encourage parents who are using the fillable form to check on is that they have the most recent free version of Adobe Reader on their computers, because older versions of Adobe Readers may not work with some of the nuances that are built into the forms with the latest version of Adobe Pro. So once you've checked to make sure that you've got Adobe Reader on your computer, download the forms to your computer and save them. Then open the form you want to use using Adobe Reader to begin completing it. What a lot of parents may not understand or realize is that if you're using Chrome, you're using Google Chrome, or if you're using Microsoft Edge, each of those web browsers tends to have a PDF reader of its own, and it wants to shift you into using that PDF reader. But if you try to work with the form using a Chrome PDF reader or an Edge PDF reader, there are aspects of the form that are going to become really frustrating. And so we can't stress enough that if you want to open the forms to start working in them, open your Adobe Reader first, and then using your Adobe Reader, call up the form from the point that you saved it in your computer hard drive, and then working on it is going to be a whole lot easier. Remember to save your form prior to submitting it to the homeschooling office. Save it, and then take and attach it as an attachment in an email. That's the easiest way for us to process it on our end. Sometimes parents will embed the form in the body of the email, and we can work with that. It just takes a little bit longer. Receiving them as attachments in general just tends to work the quickest.
All right, so the forms are typically divided in two halves. I guess the top half of the form is the parent and student information, and so that does need to be completed. And in that section, they do ask for the student MET or MET number, and that MET number is sent to you in your confirmation of notification letter that you get when you submit your notification form and your program outline. So you would get that letter by mail. A side note, that confirmation letter is an important document, and we recommend you keep it for your records always. But if for whatever reason you can't find it, you don't know what happened, you can always ask the homeschooling office for a copy. However, if you do not know your MET number, you can't find it or locate it, please do not worry about it. It's not necessary to call the homeschool office or email the homeschool office to obtain it. In the case, in the reporting, if you can't locate it, you may leave it blank. It's just that our support staff will fill it in. So it's a little more work for them on their end. So it is very helpful if you do keep track of that. That number never changes. It's a 9-digit number that follows a student throughout their K-12 education, whether they're in public school, independent school, or homeschool. Another question we get a lot is about grade level, and how do I, fill in the grade level slot? And what we recommend is that you match the student's age with the appropriate grade level. So that means like age 8 would be grade 3. However, when completing the comment section in the report, if the student is working at a different grade level because that's appropriate to the student's instructional needs, please indicate this when reporting on that subject. And I think Larissa gave a great example with her student. So, if your student is at a grade 3 level, but you're doing grade 2 math, then that's appropriate for your student. You would talk about the progress you've made at that grade level with your student. Sometimes there are cases where students have special learning needs, and if it is helpful if a parent indicates this and gives context to the learning, so that if there's a large gap between the age appropriate grade level and the student learning and where they're at, it just helps the liaison to contextualize the learning. So we encourage the parent to express the progress, obviously based on what the student is working on and what they're successful at and where they're going with it. So we want it to be appropriate to that student. It's just nice to get some context too.
Yeah. And as has been said before, remember the January and June reports are not a report on the parents. They just are not. And parents really need to feel at ease with the fact that you need to tell it like it is in regards to where your student is at. And there are no judgments ever made on parents by liaisons when they read these reports. The more clarity in the reports, the better the understanding we have and how we might be able to assist in terms of talking to you about maybe something you could try or some assistance you might be able to look at. But we don't know that if we don't know what some of the determinants of the difficulties are that your student is having. So completing the comments section really includes documenting the things that Larissa has talked about, which include what has your child done really well? Where are they at? What have they completed? You know, what have they mastered? What are they struggling with? What seems to be something that they just can't seem to get on top of? And I've had parents then make suggestions about things that they're going to try differently next term to try and get on top of some of those things. And I really appreciate the thinking that the parents have stepped into in terms of attempting to mediate that difficulty that they see their student having. And then, you know, talking about what do you see that still needs an improvement. And again, this is not any kind of an indicator of what the parent is or is not doing, because the parent is learning about their student just as any teacher would be learning about that student if that student was in a school classroom away from the home. So you can also refer to the June grades 2, 8, and 11 sample reports online. They may give you some ideas as to how you may want to structure your reports. They're there for you to just take a look at.
Yeah, I see a question in the chat. And yes, you can indicate special needs. There's often room in the top half of the form, kind of where the grade level is indicated. There's some space there if ever you wanted to make a comment, just to give context before you start the comment section of the report. Some parents have diagnosis or they've identified the need, and so they might include that. Or if the child had been in school previously, there might be some records, and that might have been shared with the homeschooling office. So there's different ways of doing it, but it is helpful just on each report to indicate if that student specifically is working within you know, a different context due to their needs. Sorry, just so that you know, we have context when we're reading the form itself. I won't spend too much time on this. We've mentioned it already, but equivalency is what the liaison officer is working towards identifying. And so we just, as we work through that, we do connect with families and, you know, either through email or by phone, just to get clarification when we're going through the comment section of the form.
All right. The comment section about how a child is doing within each subject area really contributes to that complete homeschooling record for the student. This is for the benefit of the student. I know some parents have said to me, well, my son or daughter's never going to go on to study anything else as soon as they're done with their homeschool or going out to work. And yet some of those same students later on phone me and say, I need some help to try and get into this area of studies that I now want to step into. And you know, I'm always elated when I hear that, but I'm always hoping that when I open up the family file that I'll find enough information in there that I'll be able to support that student if there's something they need some help with in terms of support to have them go where they want to go. I've never ever counted out a student, and I learned this a long time ago as a classroom teacher. I had a student in junior high in grade 9 that if breathing was not autonomic, he would have suffocated. I kid you not. You know, he was just that kind of a kid. And I thought to myself, how are you ever going to make it as an adult? I just couldn't fathom it. Well, he came back to visit me some years later to tell me that he was finishing up second year honors chemistry at the U of M. And I felt horrible inside because I really discounted him years before when I had no business doing that. So it just taught me something so incredibly important, that you never know what dreams kids have and where they're going to go. So what you can do now to help them for the completion and the attainment of their dreams going forward through some record keeping probably will mean more to them than you'll ever know. So parents are encouraged to provide detailed comments that describe their child's learning and may provide context by using anecdotal observations. And as Michelle has said, we've got more lines now in each of the text areas for information that parents can provide that is clear and concise. We're not asking you to write novels or essays, but you're very welcome to if you wish. Every once in a while, we do get one of those, and like, wow, it is like really understanding this child to a point where you feel like you know them unbelievably. And I think of all the time the parent must have spent developing this, and I'm not advocating for that by any means in regards to all parents, but for those parents that wish to provide that kind of an extended context, they're very welcome to do that.
Yeah, so finally, completing the comment section, Larissa touched on it. You may assign a number or a letter grade if you'd like. There is a space for that on the form for the June report. However, it's not required. So it is you may leave it blank as well. If a parent is using structured curricula, then they can note sometimes the units that they have completed. So we do get that kind of reporting, and then commenting on the student resources, parents are encouraged to include the main resources, the ones that kind of really come in and complemented the learning. And again, some resources are discovered well after the program outline was submitted in September, and so it's nice to include those in your reporting because it gives a nice kind of well-rounded perception of all the learning that kind of went into that subject. One of the things that I think Ellen and I wanted to speak to is that there has been a practice of reporting, especially in June, the completion of students' work with the word completed. So that would be the only word we see on the report for the 4 subjects. And sometimes the name of the program if it was a structured program. And that doesn't provide a sense of what the student did well, of what they struggled with, maybe what they still need to improve in. So a single word like completed, or sometimes just a grade all on its own, like 95%, provides a very limited context of student learning. This kind of reporting really hampers, I think, the determining of equivalency and of the student's progress. And so I feel I think we've determined that it's a limited benefit to the student's historical educational record as well. So, when we receive reports such as these, they would prompt a liaison to definitely connect with the family for clarification, because I'm sure the parent has an excellent sense of what has been completed and where the student's at. But for us reading that report, it really doesn't give us much context, unfortunately.
And sometimes we really need that context when, as an example, Gerald, I know you were talking before about a student who was interested in, I believe, joining the Canadian military. And I had a situation last year where I had a family that really had put together a very complete homeschooling record for their high school student. And the military at that time had a policy that unless a student came in with a GED or a high school diploma, they couldn't join the armed forces. but this student's record was so complete that I was really able to lobby the recruitment officer who phoned me to ask me about it, where I had enough information in the reports that I could really talk at length about the student and really lobby for that student to have a shot at getting into what they wanted to do. In the end, the recruiting officer did promise that he would take up the chain of command the whole issue of their policy around only accepting GEDs and high school diploma people, because I said this student easily, from the information I have, could have achieved that and more had he been in a different system. And I really was able to speak to the fact that just because he didn't have a Manitoba high school diploma should not mean that he shouldn't have that opportunity. So that information was so invaluable to me in terms of advocating for him, something that I would have never had the opportunity if there would have been a single word on a June report. I just couldn't have done for him what I felt I could in that situation. So in completing the form that you do in June, if you're making changes to the program outline, and those things happen during the course of an instructional year, you make changes to student resources after your January progress report, and that's simply okay. That is what good teaching is all about. If you're seeing something better that you can use, or you're seeing something that isn't working nearly to the point that you want it to, and you find another resource that's better, tell us about it so we know what the new resource is that you're referencing in your June report. And that just says volumes to us about how finally you're trying to tune the programming for your student. We never look at it as a detriment that you've changed resources. Teachers in classrooms do that all the time. Good teachers do that all the time with students, where they feel they find something that the student will work with better. Because education is an ever-evolving process, and parents will make the best decisions regarding changes to the program outlines and resources. And if you indicate those updates in your subsequent reports, it really helps us out.
Yeah, we've compiled a few common questions that we received this year, and we thought we'd kind of go through them and answer them. We have been asked a lot about the complete Canadian curriculum this year, and we've been answering pretty much the same all year long, is that the complete Canadian curriculum, which is found, I know, at Costco and probably a few other box stores, it may be used as a supplement if that's something you're interested in, but it does not provide sufficient educational programming for the whole school year, and it does not meet equivalency. And so we really encourage parents who just plan as this being their one and only resource to really, we challenge the parent to really look at other options and building their program outline so that they have a more well-rounded approach to their child's education and they can meet equivalency.
Pardon me. Okay, and another question that comes up is about unschooling. So what do we say if we have a student that, pardon me, has been someone who has been unschooled? I always chuckle a bit because students who are unschooled are actually schooled. It's just the approach is different, and they're not necessarily using a program that they've purchased from somewhere else. They're usually putting together programs and materials where a child-centered approach is stepped into with the child to a degree determining the topics of study within language arts, math, science, and or social studies. I've got some families that will unschool, for lack of a better term, in one or more subjects, some in all subjects, some in only one subject. But at the same time, they do, for their student, through agreement with the student, decide that there's some latitude they want to allow for topics that the student wants to study. The June report would outline the topics, concepts, areas, and units of study, along with the resources used and progress made. So really what the report becomes is almost like a program outline, along with how did they do with that program outline, so that we on our end have a far better understanding of exactly what did that student choose to study, and how did the parent in the end feel that student did in those areas that they chose to study in. So again, in a lot of cases, families will either reduce the font size if they're using a pencil or a pen on the piece of paper, or they'll put in extra information in additional pieces of paper, but they provide that additional information so that we, again, have a really good understanding of what it is they did and how they did in what they did.
Yeah. So questions 3 and 4, there's a little bit of a distinction between them. So we have the struggling learner, and then we have the special needs learner. So a struggling learner, can be that they're struggling in only an area of learning, or maybe there's an identified learning disability specific to that area of learning. Maybe again, it just depends on the learner, but it's definitely okay to indicate that your child is struggling in an area of learning. Sometimes it's just learner readiness, and the students, just not quite ready for that learning to take place. And so as a parent, it's definitely your task to determine how best to program for those areas where the student is having some difficulty. You may have a conversation with any of the liaisons. We're all happy to work with a parent and assist in any way we can. We do all come from, we're all teachers basically, and we just definitely have a heart for education. And, sometimes we have access to information or possible solutions that a parent may not realize or have thought of. So, we do try and connect parents to any assistance we can. Again, it was said earlier, but we're not there to judge the parent because the student is struggling. I think, we really want to, offer any kind of support to the parent who's asking some important questions to support the learner. And, that's where parents will indicate they're either working at different grade levels or in different way on that subject area. And I see there's some good questions in the chat right now around that. And so, definitely, we're always happy to have a conversation one-on-one with a parent and kind of work with them that way, just to clarify any questions they may have. But always best, I think, if a parent can be open with us, and we'll do everything we can to support that parent.
And in fact, Michelle, it's so interesting that you talked about that, because I had 2 conversations late this afternoon with 2 different parents who have students who are struggling. And I was so elated and astounded at how well those parents know their kids and how open and honest they were about the things that they were struggling with. And it made for really good conversation regarding what could we do. I was able to provide some suggestions, which I think provided each of those parents with a direction to go in. I've got some further work I have to do and research to get back to at least one of those parents. But I just so appreciated the fact that they were open and honest, and not once did I ever judge or see them as lacking as parents. In fact, I see them as all-star parents, because they are so well able to articulate the kinds of things that they want for their kids, the kinds of understandings they have, the realistic understandings they have of where their kids are now. And as a result, what can we do together to plan something that will benefit their kids and that they're going to have some success with? Because in the end, we liaisons here at Manitoba Education, we want our homeschool families to succeed. That's at the bottom of everything we do. We want to see you guys and gals with your kids succeed, because that means then that in some small part we've done our job. And certainly we don't judge parents who are saying, I'm just having a really tough time right now, because that just gives us a chance to dig in with them to find out, okay, what might we be able to do about that? And Michelle alluded to the struggling learner and the special needs learner being quite different in many respects. Parents are encouraged to modify programming to meet their students' needs and to offer authentic and appropriate learning. Sometimes, often, a special needs learner comes out of the school system with an IEP. If the parent is willing to share that individual education plan, the IEP, with we, the liaisons, we then can take a look at it, because we, as teachers, have all had experience with IEPs. It gives us a chance to look with the parent at the IEP. What can we pull out of that IEP that they can continue to work on? Very often the parents will say, yeah, that IEP does really reflect where my kid is at, but I'm not sure where to go with this. And then we can have a conversation about what that can look like. So again, just parents trusting us so that we can work with you means that really in the end, the winner is the student.
And finally, another common question is about, especially in June, is about a student who has completed grade 12. And Larissa definitely touched on that as well, is that when a student is finishing their grade 12 year and they have maybe plans to submit some post-secondary applications and that kind of thing, then they may need a stamped copy of their student notification form and of their January and June homeschooling progress reports, as Larissa demonstrated. And so our office can definitely provide those records to the student, who then would share them with the post-secondary institution they're applying with. So we're more than happy to do that. And it's always, I think, recommended and beneficial to start looking early with regards to post-secondary sort of requirements, I guess, when it comes to admitting homeschool students, because most of them now do have a policy around working with homeschooling students, but then they'll have their requirements that go with that. And each institution's a little bit different. So it's just really good to kind of get a head start on that and know what you need. But our office will definitely support any of that as needed.
Yeah, and just to also reiterate that post-secondary institutions are not governed in terms of admissions policies by any regulations, provincial regulations or legislation. So they will often change admissions requirements midstream. There's no way we can keep up with that at the homeschooling office. So we very much encourage the families, if they have a student in grade 11 who knows that maybe they want to attend CMU or they want to attend Brandon University or U of M or any one of the post-secondaries or Red River College, start asking those institutions questions already when they're a grade 11 student. So what does my student need to enter into the program of studies that they are interested in? And not only ask that question when they're in grade 11, but ask that question when they're in grade 12. I mean, I ran into that with a family the other year where midway through the student's grade 12 year, Red River College changed their admissions requirements for the area of study that he wanted to step into. And so then we were scrambling in the middle of the year. So that's the thing. It's for parents to stay on top of that. And it can be frustrating for parents. I really understand that. But the system is what it is, for lack of a better way to put it. Michelle, did you want to say anything as a wrap up before we stop the share and turn things back over to Gerald?
Just that my phone is blowing up because the Habs won. And all of us francophones are elated.
The Habs won? Are you serious?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, Toronto will never live this down. Oh, there will be so much crying in Toronto that they're going to have to probably open the sewer gates because they're going to flood. Holy smokes, I can't believe that. Sorry about that, people. I just, yeah, you get kind of wrapped up in hockey. Anyway, Gerald, I'm going to stop the share. It's all back to you.
Ellen and Michelle, thank you so much for that very informative and excellent presentation. Peter, thanks for your excellence in dealing with the questions as they've been streaming in throughout the evening. Much appreciated, and you've added a lot to the evening. One person had a question here that I'll just speak to quickly, and that was whether the expenses to homeschool can be claimed. And I'm assuming you're referencing income tax or that kind of thing. The answer is basically no. There really is no like tax credit or that sort of thing. The only thing that you can claim would be the same kinds of tax credits that other parents can claim, things like sports and those sorts of things that any parent, but there's nothing specific at all to home education, and there is no funding for home education in Manitoba. And I think we actually think that's a good thing. Because when funding happens, then strings and various kinds of requirements happen that may not be in the best interests of us as homeschoolers. So not that we don't recognize that there's significant investment and expenses involved, but there is no tax credit or claiming ability that's related to it. I'm just going to ask Michelle, in addition to being a Montreal fan, I know that you shared with some of us just in preparation for this call a little bit about your experience in your own homeschooling with your children, and I'm just wondering whether you could just give us just a real Reader's Digest version of sort of where you went through, and I think the part that I'm particularly interested in is the ability that you realized with your children to be able to get accommodation for their needs. And
Yeah.
you can just tell us a little bit about that story, because I think it's one that I think, as in the case of our family, we were not able to do that because we'd actually, it was quite a few years ago, but it takes documentation and things. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
For sure. Yeah, thanks. I had mentioned in one of our meetings with Gerald that our oldest son does have a learning disability. And although we didn't identify it throughout the early years of homeschooling, and although as a teacher, my husband and I are both teachers, we've worked in the school system, we had a sense maybe of what we were looking at, but we also sort of knew that the public school system of the day would not necessarily have been a better environment or support for where his learning was going. And he basically wasn't able to read on his own until age 12, and he couldn't write his first name without any spelling errors until age 14. So never mind MACHS, that was off the table. So we just we knew he was always progressing and learning. He was actually an avid reader from before age 1, and all of that. His favorite place in the world was the public library. We had to go weekly. So he was just, his learning was wonderful, to watch as a parent and as a teacher. However, it was not typical. And when he was 14, he was reading a medical journal that he had taken out of the public library. And the medical journal was highlighting dyslexia. And he approached us that evening and said, you know, I'm reading about this, and this is describing my reality. And so we then had, at least he had self-identified. We had a starting point. In Manitoba at the time, there still wasn't a lot of supports available. And so there wasn't a lot that we did at age 14 with him on that front until when he was 16. He had basically come to us again and said, I'm ready to prepare for post-secondary. And so we knew that for him to access the post-secondary, he would definitely need some support to accommodate his learning. And we discovered at that time a dyslexic learning business basically that had opened up in Winnipeg, which was a great starting point for us. It kind of, when visiting the post-secondary institutions, we discovered that there was a lot of support for his learning disability. So we got recommended to a psychologist. He did go and get the testing done, and was able to get the supports in writing through the psychologist. And when he started university at age 17, he had, at the time, the government was providing financial support for learning disability as well. So he was getting allotted about $10,000 annually towards what he needed in accommodations. So he got his computer, any software he needed. He had a professional note taker in the classroom. He wrote his exams all in a separate room because he would dictate or orally answer everything to a scribe. So these types of supports were very, I think, beneficial to his growth and his learning. And he really flourished and loved his university experience. And so, you know, it was really extremely beneficial. And he had a lot of self-confidence, and I really believe that's key to how he progressed through the system, because as soon as he entered the post-secondary at 17, he had to self-advocate. I couldn't be part of that discussion. And so he really had to, you know, quickly, you know, kind of stand on his own 2 feet and have his needs met. And he did. And so he ended up completing, all told, I think 7 years of post-secondary, and a couple degrees later. He has always presented with the need for accommodation, even when he you know, posted for jobs. And often the jobs that he was going for had tests, and he would get accommodations, and has been offered some really amazing career opportunities. And the most recent one is he has been hired by NATO in Belgium, and he'll be starting there this fall in September. And we're really quite proud of that journey. And it's only been 10 years since he started his post-secondary. So we think he's come a long way, and that's a real success story in our minds.
Michelle, thank you for sharing that with us, because I think it's certainly an insight into both the challenges as well as the opportunities. And I know there's a number of questions from people that have students with various needs. Our call here today is not to focus on that, but I know that Kelly Gieselson had a question about accessing services, and in particular educational assessments. There's a lot of what we consider to be non-educational quasi-health services that are delivered in conjunction with public schools in most cases. And once students become of school age, the access to those is somewhat challenging or inconsistent. And we've raised this with the minister, and we've had assurances from both the Department of Families and the Department of Education that access should be possible. There's limitations on funding, but it should be possible. So I would encourage you, all, and those in particular with special needs, like you, Kelly, to not give up. And if you have questions, I'm sure that Michelle and others from the homeschool office would be glad to talk to you, but MACHS would like to hear from you and be able to help you in directing you to people that have been down this path, because I think a lot of it is learning from other parents and the experiences that they've had in being able to access various services.
And Gerald, we on the inside have also raised those concerns and sent them up as well. So it's not just the parent community that is concerned about it. We on the inside are very concerned about it as well, and feel that something needs to change. I guess we need to see what the new act and the associated things that may go with it will bring.
So Kelly, in response to your question, is it possible? Yes. Is it easy? Probably not, but it is possible. And you heard Michelle's story. And I know that there's many others that can share their stories with perseverance and study and sharing. It's something that I would encourage you not to give up on and to work together with others. And we're glad to be able to help you in any way we can. What I'd like to do now is to open up the discussion to any questions. It's probably the easiest for you to chat in your questions, but if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question verbally, we certainly can do that as well. So if there's any questions that you'd like to ask of any of us, whether it be me or Larissa or Ellen or Michelle or Peter, we'd be glad to be able to chat. And maybe just before we do that, while we're waiting for either some hands to wave or some questions on chat, Larissa, did you have any other comments in follow up to what we've heard here?
One thing that did cross my mind when Michelle was talking about grade 12 is what do you do when they're done? But even a year before that, I started making up my transcript for my kids. Ideally, of course, you'd started after grade 9 and put those courses in. But after grade 11 is when I sent in my first transcript with their June report. And so that was on file if they needed it, if any of the post-secondary had needed it, because they apply before even the January report sometimes gets sent in. Then at least I had that much documentation ready to go. And that was the case with my daughter with CMU. I had that grade 11 transcript, and that's what they were asking for was the interim transcript or grade 11 transcript and that's what she was accepted on. And so then we didn't send in her final one until after she was accepted. So having that already done at the end of grade 11 made it a lot easier when she came to me and said, "Hey, Mom, I need this right away to send in." So.
Thanks for that, Larissa. Yes, question from Crooks.
Hi, sorry. I hope you can hear me. It's not so much of a question as Michelle was mentioning the MET letter that she sends at the beginning of the year, how important it is to keep it, because that little portion at the bottom indicates that you're a teacher. And I was getting teacher discounts at places. I would say I homeschool and they'd be like, "Oh, you get a teacher's discount." I'd be like, "That's fantastic. They don't tell you that." So just to give a shout out, keep that little card in your wallet. Michael's, Anywhere Artsy, they all give you a teacher discount, which is fantastic. And also just to, I love how friendly you guys are at the Manitoba office there, because I was new to Manitoba and I feel like I have to apologize, like I have been hostile in the past, because I came from a province, believe it or not. I was given $2,000 per child per year for homeschooling with zero government interference. I mean, they're just like, "Here you go school your child." And then I come to Manitoba and they're like, "You have to do this and this and this. Oh yes, and by the way, you have to pay for it all yourself." And I'm just, what? That's very different. So I'm so glad you guys are out there to help us out. I see now the importance of this. honestly, I'm one of those people that it's hard for me to put a sentence on paper. I don't have the time. I guess I'm a lazy writer. But you guys have forced me to do it, and I see the importance of it now, because if I lost my documentation, I know what my kid did in grade 4. It's really awesome. So thank you so much over there at that office. I am that woman that gets a phone call every year because my reports are so terrible. Yeah, and I'm considered a veteran as well. So that's, yeah, for what it's worth.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Michelle, there's a question about French language.
I did see that in the chat. Yeah.
One of the areas where I have to confess that I really can't help people too much with that, but I won't tell you the last time I took French and what happened. It wasn't a good experience.
Yeah, I can definitely support a family that's looking to offer their education in French. And I did work with the French side of the Ministry of Education for about 3 years. So I have good connections and good ideas as to where, really great resources can be found and how a parent can work through that. A parent who is teaching in French for the 4 subject areas in Manitoba, there are definitely some really excellent supports if you know where to look. And all of the, basically the homeschooling website is fully available in French. So I do prepare everything that's posted in English in French. So I'm the lucky translator. And so it's like every form, every sample, the videos were prepared in French and English, as well as the guideline documents, like everything is available in French. So this is for people who are working as French as a first language. If they're working more in the French immersion setting, there are definitely a few more challenges that way, because typically the parent doesn't speak French and for French immersion philosophies, you're immersing the student in French learning. So it does take a teacher who can provide that context. However, we do have ideas to support any parent who's looking to integrate French learning, either as an English program or as the Français program.
Okay,
And if you do call our office and you would like service in French, our first goal is to ensure that we have met your needs. So I've sometimes had parents who called, and I've sensed that they are Francais, and so I will ask them, would you like to speak to our French-speaking liaison? Because this is not about which liaison works with who. This is about providing the best service that we can provide to Manitoba families. And so Michelle does double duty, because not only does she work with me in preparing the English scripting for many things, but then she's on her own for the French scripting. And it's not a direct translation. There's often a lot of nuancing that goes into the most appropriate language to use in the French language. And so she's often doing double duty.
I'll just further mention on a national basis, our good friends, and I'm involved with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association of Canada. We have a French division, and the website and publications and so forth, there's a lot of good information in French language that's available on a national basis, not just for Quebec.
And I just wanted to say, I see a lot of questions in the chat, and if Peter, you want to just maybe put up my personal email through the government, maybe that's an easier way for people to reach me if they have questions about French resources. I see the comment for Icelandic, and our youngest son did do a 4-month study program in Iceland, and he did learn Icelandic here at the U of M before going out there. So it's kind of a neat link. And so, yeah, languages are always very beneficial on all fronts. I wanted to thank the previous speaker, I think Crooks, I'm not sure, I don't think that's your first name, but I really want to thank her for her comments. And she did share about the letter. The letter has changed. It doesn't have a little sort of cutout card at the bottom anymore. It's just a letter from our office that has all the information to confirm that you're homeschooling. You can take a picture of that and carry that in your phone when you're going to those resource centers that offer discounts. And I don't have a full list of who and who does not offer discounts. I think MACHS might be better placed for that. But I do know that I've heard a lot of families take advantage. So if you don't want to carry the full letter around with you everywhere, that might be an option.
Yep.
I don't know if there is a master list anywhere, but in addition to places like Coles Indigo Chapters, Christie's Office Plus, Staples, Michael's, even Ricky's has teacher days where they will take our cards. And sometimes museums do as well. You can get in on school discounts, or maybe even the zoo. I don't remember if you have to have a minimum number for that, but just ask anywhere you're going that might have an educational component. Just ask if you can qualify as a homeschool teacher, and showing that letter will. And then this is what the card used to look like at the bottom. There is a little cutout portion down here, but it's gone now. So.
Yeah, the reason, Larissa, that we removed that was we had many instances where parents would cut that bottom card out and throw the rest away. But the rest that they threw away was so important if they needed documentation for an official purpose related to Revenue Canada or something else. And we were printing an inordinate number of new copies that parents needed because of these other things, because Revenue Canada wouldn't just take that little card at the bottom. They wanted the whole letter. And so we finally said, there's got to be a way that parents won't throw that whole thing away, even after we had reminded parents that they shouldn't. It was still being tossed out. And so, yeah, we...
2009.
Yeah. Wow.
I have them all here.
But anyway, now at least, yeah, as you've said, Michelle, if you take a picture of it and carry it in your phone, it represents the same thing, and it is an official government document and will be accepted by Revenue Canada, where they are asking for proof of educational programming for a student that they have that's been paid the child tax credit for. The last couple of years, Revenue Canada has really slowed down for that. But we used to get 30 or more calls a year from families because they were being audited by Revenue Canada. I don't know what was going on there or why, but that's really slowed down.
They got bigger fish to fry.
I think so.
Yeah. Any other questions that anybody has? Some good suggestions, good email addresses and contacts there that are being shared in the chat. That's great to see. Anybody else that's got a question here today? I think we've had a very comprehensive session. Pearl says, can she get those letters? I'm sure that all you need to do is send something to Manitoba Education and they'd be glad to help you, Pearl. If there's no other questions, I just want to remind everyone that the session this evening has been recorded and will be available on the MACHS website, along with the sessions from January, as well as all of the Exploring Home Education and the MACHS conference sessions. So they're all on the website. You can go there and watch them at your leisure, and just basically want to be able to increase the value and the reach in being able to share this information. So I want to thank Ellen and Michelle and Peter and Larissa for their part in making this evening a great information session. And I'm just going to ask whether they have any closing comments before we end this evening. Any things that you had thought you were maybe wanted to say and hadn't got around to it, or some things, some further thoughts. There's Pearl and her her family on the picture. Great to see you, Pearl.
What I wanted to say, Gerald, is that on behalf of Jasmine, Peter, Michelle, and myself, I would like to sincerely thank you and thank MACHS. I would like to thank Larissa and the Westman Homeschool Collective for the opportunity to be invited into your homes this evening so that we could have a conversation about something that is really important to the life of a homeschool student as they travel through that homeschool journey. And in the end, we are here to work with families, and we are here first and foremost to support students. And we appreciate all of the work MACHS and Gerald and Larissa and Westman that you've done and you currently do to really further the cause of homeschooling in Manitoba. And certainly we value our relationship with you, and it's something that we don't take lightly. And we certainly hope to have the opportunity again in the future to get together.
Ellen, thank you. And Kelly, we appreciate your encouragement, and we will continue to try to organize discussions and sessions like this. And it's great to be able to have this face-to-face discussion, particularly with Manitoba Education, but also with other veteran homeschool parents, to be able to share the experience, the struggles, and the opportunities. So it's great to see that. Michelle or Peter, any comments?
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Gerald. I've gotten so many questions here in the chat. Some of them have people sent to everybody and some sent privately. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you to MACHS for making this platform available for parents and the time that they've taken to support families in this way. And I just want to reiterate that reaching out with these questions to any of the homeschooling liaisons at any time, we'd be happy to help you out. And sometimes it's just a point and a nudge in a direction where you can find some information, because a Google search isn't helping you out, and the other families that you've connected with haven't dealt with this situation before. So connecting with other families is so important to share your experiences with each other, and a place like MACHS can definitely provide you with the ability to connect with other families, which is great. But those unique situations and questions that you may have, I shared the email addresses in there. So send us an email, and we'd be happy, or give us a call, and we'd be happy to respond in any way that we can to support you and to support the learning and growth of our kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
I just want to thank all the parents in attendance, because I know tonight was hockey night. That's a big deal for my husband anyway. That's where he was. And to just take the time out and be part of this conversation. I really want to thank Larissa. I think her sharing was amazing because she's right in the thick of it. And so her examples are bang on, wonderful examples, and I think super helpful to contextualize sort of what that looks like from the parent standpoint. So, I really appreciate, Larissa, your sharing. And I just want to thank Gerald and MACHS for hosting this opportunity and inviting us in. I think that's really, really important to maintain this positive relationship. So I want to say that I really appreciate it. And reiterate that, yeah, the 4 liaisons are available. If you don't know how to reach us directly, just straight to the homeschooling website, the homeschooling email, the generic one, and you will be connected to a liaison. So it will reach us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Larissa, any last?
I'd like to thank you, Alan and Michelle, too. Peter, I haven't had much of a chance to get to meet you yet, but I sure appreciate how all 4 of you are there and available for homeschool families at any time to contact by phone or fax or email. I appreciate the support you've given me over the past years, and I thank you for that. And since my connection to the Westman Homeschool Connection has been mentioned a few times tonight, I'd just like to mention that I am one of the administrators for a group called the Westman Homeschool Connection. It's only a Facebook group at this point. There has been a Yahoo Mail group over the past, but right now it's basically virtual. We sometimes have in-person meetings when COVID allows, but if you want to connect with that, Facebook is the way to do that. So you can look up Westman Homeschool Connection, and there are several veteran homeschoolers on that group that are willing to help with finding curriculum and all those kinds of things, as well as just regular support. What do you do when? All those questions. So, and thank you, Gerald, again, and MACHS for all that you offer to homeschoolers in Manitoba. It's a blessing to be a part of evenings like this. So.
Thank you, Larissa. I just want to recognize the tough times that we're in. I recognize that for families not being able to get together with other families, this is not normal homeschooling. This is isolation schooling, or call it whatever you wish, but it's not the way that homeschooling happens best. And that's what we told the Minister of Education when we met with him recently. We told him that we were concerned that families were not able to get together. Now the reality is that we met with him on one of the very days when restrictions were being ramped up even further. So we recognize that, today, tomorrow, this isn't going to change, but we did ask that when things are possible, when schools are coming back into force, and when schools are meeting, that support groups should also be able to meet, because we are offering coordinated educational services, and there needs to be standards and there needs to be protocols, but we asked for him to advocate on our behalf, to make sure that when Manitoba Health is considering things, that the minister says, what about homeschooling? What about support groups? What about co-ops? And is raising the possibility and the probability that they can meet. And we asked him, and he said that he would be that voice. So we can't promise anything, but I just wanted you to know that we recognize the tough times that you're in, and that we're trying to offer some pathways for families to be able to get together during these times as we're progressing. So with that, I think that brings to a close. I'm just going to ask our fellow executive member on MACHS, Cheryl Ronald. Cheryl, is there any things that you wanted to pass on before we end the evening?
I will just reiterate, well, thank you for everyone participating tonight. An excellent presentation, very helpful, and I hope that parents can use the tools that the Department of Ed has shared with us tonight, as well as Larissa, and continue to reach out, as you've been saying, whether to our home education department or through MACHS. We, as you say, we are here to support you. We are your advocates. We want to see successful results, and I appreciate everything you've done. And I just also want to pass on to the Department of Education that we as MACHS are praying for you in your job. Homeschool families around Manitoba are supporting you in prayer, and want to just encourage you with that as you do a difficult job in difficult times. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you all. With that, we'll end this evening. And if tomorrow morning you're talking to your friend and they say, I wish that I had taken that session in, you can say, give it a day or two and it'll be up on the MACHS website, and you can take it in. So the wonders of technology. So thank you all, and feel free to get in touch at any point. Bye for now.
Good night.
Bye. 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 Thank you. Oops, I can leave. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Great to see you.